Oh, let's go up to verse 1. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring. And seems pretty self-evident. We make all our plans today. We say we're going to do such and such tomorrow, and then life gets in the way and everything's a train wreck. Or God just changes your plans. We're going through Acts in our local study here, and we just did Acts 16 last week, and right at the beginning of Acts 16, here it is, Paul and Timothy. They went through the region of Phrygia and Galatia, having been forbidden by the Holy Spirit to speak the word in Asia. When they came to Mysia, they were trying to proceed to Bithynia, but the Spirit of Yeshua would not allow them. So, Paul planned out his missionary journeys. He wasn't just wandering down the roads. I get the impression that when Yeshua sent out his 12 disciples during his 3-year or however long ministry, when he sent them out 2 by 2, he just sent them in general directions. And they just walked, and, whatever town they came to, that's where they stayed and taught. But here, Paul has a specific itinerary. He's going to go to this town, and then this town, and then this town. But on the way there, God stops him and says, no, don't go to that one. You're not ready for that one yet. And the place that God does send him, that God does allow him to go, he ends up being beaten. He's beaten nearly to death. And God interrupts our plans. We like to think that, God has something better in mind for us, and he does. But better doesn't always look the way that we expect it to. Sometimes God has something different in store for us, and it's not going to be pleasant, but it will be better in the end. Better for us, or better for the people that we encounter, or better for your community, better for somebody, better for the kingdom in any case. We go back to Proverbs. Anyone else have any thoughts on that verse?
Well, I'm not sure it's, when saying do not boast, I think boast is a key word there, because you do make your plans, but it's almost, I'm declaring that tomorrow is going to be sunny, or I'm declaring that I'm going to be X or Y tomorrow. So it's almost like that declaration is a key factor in that verse, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's interesting that you use that word, that it's going to be sunny or it's going to sunshine. I can't remember exactly what you said.
Right.
But at least Strong's, in the definition for the word, it uses to shine as one of the possible meanings of the word, where it says to boast. Yeah, that's what Brown Driver Briggs says. That's the primary meaning, is to shine, but also to praise. Yeah, taking it in that literal sense, it would be like saying, this great thing is going to happen to me tomorrow, or I've set all this stuff up to make sure that this great thing happens tomorrow. But it's not necessarily going to be so. We can make all the preparations we want, but sometimes God changes that. The last verses are talking about preparing for the future, and they're actually talking about good things that happen. If you want lasting wealth that's going to continually provide for you, it takes time and planning to develop that. The person in this passage they have lambs and goats, and they have fields. Apparently they've got crops sown, and all of those things take time. It's not like you can go buy, like a stock. You can go buy a stock today, and maybe it'll go up tomorrow, and you sell it and you made a little bit of money. In this case, you're buying animals or seed, and it could take months to years before you see any kind of return on it. And that first verse in an agrarian culture could really be talking about this kind of scenario, saying, yeah, I planted, so many acres of barley, and 3 months from now, I'm going to be rich. Maybe so, maybe not. We'll see how the weather works out. All right, let's move on to verse 2. Let another praise you and not your own mouth, stranger, not your own lips. Yeah.
So I'm on a stock website, and I do a lot of interaction, and I get the biggest kick when somebody makes a statement, then they like their own statement. it's just disingenuous as far as I'm concerned. Let somebody else toot your horn or speak well of you,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I've done that on social media at times to see if that might, tweak the algorithms a little bit, but I'm pretty sure they're smarter than that. So I gave up on it.
Yeah.
But honestly, it reminds me of Trump and
Yeah.
how he talks about how great everything he does is. And
Yeah.
I would certainly prefer a President Trump over a President Biden, but he sure does praise himself a lot. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Biden does too, of course, but he's a little more understated about it than Trump is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was listening to Trump talk about the call that he had with somebody in Ukraine. I don't remember who it was, and he was being criticized recently about that call. That it sounded like he was trying to bribe somebody, or like there was something shady going on. And Trump is saying, that was a perfect call. Nobody could find a flaw in that call. It was perfect. I don't even know what a perfect call means. It just
Yeah.
sounded a little silly. I mean, I know what he was trying to say, that he didn't do anything wrong in the call and it was all above board, but definitely a strange way to say it. All right, so verse 3. Stone is heavy and sand is weighty, but a fool's provocation is heavier than both. How is a fool's provocation heavy?
Well, the
Yeah,
key
how is
word
it
is
heavy?
fool. The key word is fool, I think. It's
Hmm.
so that implies that if somebody with wisdom is provocative, then that's okay. It's if you respond to provocation, a fool is basically going to be taking or making a specious argument, if you will. Whereas
Hmm.
if you have somebody with wisdom, their argument will have more credence. So if you're responding to something that's not wise, then it's sort of reflecting on you.
Hmm.
Uh,
Sort of answer a fool according to his folly, lest,
yeah,
or,
yeah.
yeah, lest he be wise in his own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And the opposite, of course. Don't answer a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are two ways to interpret that heavier. I mean, there's the one sense where heavy means that it carries a lot of weight, that it's meaningful or at least influential. And the other side where heavy is burdensome. And I think it can be both in this case. I mean, a fool's provocation can be very influential. You know, the world is run by fools. People are motivated by fools. They get the mob mentalities. You can have a fool on television provoking a mob, or on Twitter or Facebook or wherever, provoking a mob into violence. And so it becomes very heavy in that sense. But it's also heavy because it's a burden. It's a burden to have to listen to them. It's a burden to have to refute them every time they come up and make a mess. It's a burden to have to clean up after them. So people give a fool's word too much weight, and it puts weight on the people who have to clean up after it. Both of those make sense?
Yeah, Jerry Springer comes to mind.
Yeah,
You know,
that's true.
if you realize it's a three-ring circus, then it's a three-ring circus. But if you're giving weight to what's being presented as
Hmm.
legitimate, wow. Wrestling. Hey, there's another one.
Yeah. Yeah. Or there was that person whose name I will not give, that Bud Light made
Oh,
their spokesperson,
yeah.
and everybody, not everybody, of course, everybody on a certain side of the culture is raving about this spokesperson and putting his picture up everywhere and like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, isn't this great? But on the other hand, putting this picture on their beer cans crushed Bud Light.
Yep.
Their word carried a lot of weight with certain people, but it put a lot of weight on their shoulders too. And now they're really paying for it. Apparently,
Mm-hmm.
some of the stock exchanges are downgrading their stock, their grade now.
Oh, wow.
I haven't looked at what their stock values are, but I don't know. Sometimes I doubt the efficacy of boycotts, but apparently in this case it had an effect because somebody got fired. And
Oh, they did fire her?
yeah, well, they said that she was taking an unpaid leave of absence, but that sounds like being fired.
You know that. Okay.
Okay. Wrath is cruel, anger is overwhelming, but who can stand before jealousy? One thought I had about this is that, at least, some people just have a wrathful nature. They're always angry. And I don't think that's really what this is talking about here. I think it's talking about an event that you get angry about. You get angry for a moment, but then that anger subsides. And, you move on, you forget about it. But jealousy, if you get jealous about an event, that can eat at you for a long time and it can grow bigger. It just kind of seethes underneath the surface.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's kind of my impression of what he's trying to say here.
Yeah, wrath and anger they're sort of they typically have an edge. In other words, there's a point where anger and wrath just stop. I'm angry at a certain thing, and my wrath is at a certain element. Jealousy has no bounds. In other words, it affects other emotions. Whereas it seems to me, wrath and anger, yeah, they can affect other emotions, but I think that they are more limited or pointed, whereas jealousy is more expansive.
Yeah, it's like leaven.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it.
Okay, verse 5. Better is open rebuke than hidden love. So what do you think this means?
Hidden love it's how do you know if it's not said or not? If it's not expressed, then how do you know it's love?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
if it's hidden, that means you can't hear it, you don't see it, there's no evidence of it, which means, is it really love at all? You can have affection for somebody and not actually do anything good for them. But what's the point of that? It makes you feel good, but it doesn't make the other person feel good. This reminded me, let me pull it up here on another window. I spelled it. James 2. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. I think that's really talking about the same thing. But on the other side, what is good about open rebuke?
well, it's clarity.
Mhm.
It's do this or that. You were wrong. You're at least giving somebody a clear understanding of what you think.
Yeah. Yeah, and it can actually be helpful. If
Mm-hmm.
you're giving
Yeah.
somebody real constructive criticism, it can actually help them improve their lives. Whereas just your good wishes doesn't really do anything for anybody.
No.
And correction can be very loving in that sense.
Mhm.
Like it's actually showing love.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be harsh or
If
mean.
you care enough to rebuke someone, then
Mm-hmm.
you obviously care about them.
Yep.
So it seems like though with the comparison, better is open rebuke than love that is concealed. It's almost like saying, like, if you get rebuke, but you don't believe that you see love, maybe you should like check yourself. It's almost what it seems like to me. Like if you're tempted to think that open rebuke is not love, then
Mm.
is there other evidence of love? Like, so that's what I kind of thought of when I thought about that.
Yeah. Well, and if there isn't evidence of love, I mean, if the person really does despise you, then at least you know where you stand.
Yeah, yeah, it does give clarity. That's true. But instead of assuming that, I guess, I mean, it could be either way, but I think that if somebody despises you, it would be really unusual for them to care enough to rebuke you, unless
Mhm.
it's just like, I would think they would be more like attacking you or deriding you or something like that, as opposed to
Yeah.
like rebuking you.
Well, this is giving
Yeah.
me insight into myself. One of the things that I'm working with a counselor on right now is my freezing up or my being quiet when I shouldn't be. And that's almost like hidden love. It's all right. I'm not going to say anything because I'm not going to stir the pot, but I'm certainly not. And I'm just doing a self-analyzing right now. I'm certainly not being encouraging by being quiet, so that's interesting.
Yeah. And, I've thought about that too, especially, I know people that I know have needed somebody to tell them something in the last few months. And, I don't want to name names because I don't want to embarrass people just in case anybody knows who I'm talking about. But my tendency is to let people do their own thing and not interfere and assume that they don't really want my opinion. But that's not really true. I mean, if I'm actually a friend to somebody, then I owe it to them to tell them when I think that they're screwing something up. I mean, if I don't, I mean, that's that hidden love. The open rebuke is letting the love out if you love somebody.
Yeah. So I'll be quiet. So I'm not giving open rebuke, nor am I giving love. The silence is actually, and I'm not saying, oh, I know what to say. There's a reason why I'm silent, because I don't want to say the wrong thing, which I can do, and make it a little more difficult than it is. But there's a song, and it's about I can't remember the name of it, but it's about a love that is dying, and the chorus is something about just say something, and that's the point. It's your silence is letting this shrivel up and die. It's a hard song to listen to, but it's very telling. I mean, it's sad, that's open rebuke. It's like, it's the hot or cold. I'd rather you be hot or cold than lukewarm. Well, that's almost the lukewarm admonition. This is saying be hot or cold.
Yeah.
Don't be hidden.
Yeah, I think verse 6 is very closely related to this. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy. And in this case, nobody's hiding their love here, because a friend may hurt you. I mean, honestly, if you really care about somebody, eventually they're going to hurt you. It's just the nature of relationships. They're going to hurt your feelings. They're going to do something that disappoints you, something. But and of course, there's what we were just talking about with rebuke. A good friend will tell you if you're doing something that's going to hurt yourself. But on this other side, profuse are the kisses of an enemy. This isn't hidden love. This is hidden enmity. This is somebody who really wants to do you harm, but is portraying themselves as your friend. So they're flattering you, telling you, oh, that's not going to hurt you. That's great. Or they are, trying to do good things for you, trying to be your friend so that they can get close enough to hurt you on purpose. But, going back to the beer cans and that whole side of our culture, those people are all the enemy of each other. They are all destroying each other's lives, and they are cheering each other on. You go and mutilate yourself and pretend to be something you're not, because that's great. That's awesome. But it's not. People are destroying themselves. And all the people who say that they're friends are like defending them in it and telling them how brave they are. It's awful. They need somebody. I mean, of course, they have a whole half of the country that's trying to tell them that they are wrecking their lives, and they just accuse them of being hateful instead. But what else can you do? So happy night. Let's move on to verse 7. This is an interesting one. I kind of like this verse. One who is full loathes honey, but to one who is hungry, everything bitter is sweet. I've got some thoughts about it, but I'm curious to know what y'all think.
If you're hungry enough, it's whatever you eat's going to be good. You'll tolerate something that should be tolerated just because you're hungry.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, and I think one, like a person who's satisfied, it's like they don't necessarily want anything else, even when something's appealing. You know,
Hmm.
everybody likes something sweet, but somebody's really full, they're going to be like passing on. I mean, I've done that plenty of times. I'm not exactly the typical norm of a person, but I just think that when you're full, like you don't need anything else.
Yeah, there are
Okay.
all kinds of applications for this proverb. I mean, I can think the angle that you mentioned, Scott, I hadn't really thought of it that way, but the idea that just being desperate will lower your standards so that you'll accept things that you shouldn't or that you
Yeah.
wouldn't normally.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that applies across every area of life in, the things that you want in life, your home, your vehicle, your relationships, your friendships. If you've never had a friend before, you'll tolerate abuse from somebody who claims to be your friend. And then what Paula was saying about if you're satisfied, if you've got enough, then you're not really looking for something more. And that can be both good or bad. If you are happy with what you have, you're not out there trying to get the next thing, unless you're just that kind of person, in which case you're never going to be happy with what you've got. But on the other hand, if you are satisfied with what you have and it's not really what you should have or what you could have, then it can be a bad thing.
Yeah. If you're satiated, you can apply some discernment. If you have this emptiness, you're more likely to embrace anything to fill that hole.
There's another potential application of this too. If you are filling your life with healthy and good things,
Mm-hmm.
like if you're married, you have a good wife or a good husband, you've got a healthy congregation that you attend, you've got a good job, you're not going to have so many temptations in those areas.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you've got a good relationship with your wife, you're not going to be so tempted to stray.
Mm-hmm.
And same with a wife or a husband. If you've got a well-paying job that's satisfying, that you enjoy doing, you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to be so tempted to, indulge in a life of crime. Like, what would be the reason? Now, everybody's got their weaknesses, and you cover one temptation, and there's going to be another one. But if you know what your weaknesses are, you can try to fill those weaknesses with something that satisfies them without crossing over a line into something, into some kind of sin or something. Um, Not really, criminal is not the word I'm looking for, but something that's bad for you in any
Right. You want to be purposeful, not reactive.
right. Yeah, you don't want to be in a position where life is forcing you to accept or pursue things that you wouldn't otherwise do.
Right.
And this is related to verse 8. Like a bird that strays from its nest is a man who strays from his home. And, of course, birds have to stray from their nest to go and get food. They're young. Excuse me. But there's always a danger that when the bird is away finding food, that some predator, a snake or another bird or a raccoon or whatever, is going to come and raid the nest and steal the eggs or the chicks or whatever it is. So it's good. I mean, obviously, in the case of birds, one strategy that birds will employ is to, one stays at the nest while the other goes hunting. But when we're talking about people, you can employ that same strategy, but there's always the temptation to be looking for more of whatever. Maybe it's more money, more sex in some people's cases, more adventure in life, whatever it is. If it's putting you in a position where your home is unprotected for whatever reason, whether it's the relationship that's unprotected or the physical home, then that could be a danger. And not saying that a lot of the things that we want to pursue, getting a better job or adventure or any of those things, not necessarily bad to want those things or even to pursue them, as long as we're taking steps to make sure that our family and our base is covered.
So a bird that strays from its nest, what comes to mind to me is a chick that's fallen out of the nest.
Oh yeah,
More often
that's a
than
good point.
not, a chick that falls out of its nest is going to die more often than not. Sometimes they're mature enough so that they can survive. Or some people will put them back in the nest, but a man that strays from his house, if you're equating it to a chick that falls out of his nest, I'm trying to find, there it is a man that strays from his house. So it's suggesting that if you stray from your house, you're going to have a hard time of returning to that. It says home, not house. Your home. And I certainly think it's referring to infidelity. That's how I've interpreted it. You're going to have a hard time returning to that home. So,
yeah, I think that's true. And the baby bird, I hadn't thought of it in that way, but that's a good point. I watched a documentary about wildlife in England, if you can believe that there's such a thing. But there are these golden eagles that live up in Scotland, and they were showing the whole lifespan of these eagles. And when the chicks hatch, they're pretty helpless, but they grow up fast and they get pretty big. They get almost to the size of adults before they can even fly. And they hop around in the trees and they stretch their wings, but they can't leave that tree until they're ready to fly, because if they leave the tree, they won't get back. They're not going to get back up in that tree. And then they're just easy prey for anything that comes along.
Yeah. So you stray from your house, you stray from your home, you go for infidelity. It gets easier to be to be unfaithful again. It's like you once you've had a bite of sin, you will more easily take another bite. And often once you start down the road of sin, your next sin is going to be a little more worse than the first, because I'm familiar with that sin. I can tolerate that. It's just a path that leads to really not a good place.
Yeah, whenever you move your boundaries,
Yep.
you've got a little bit further that you can stray. You can push those boundaries just a little bit further again, and a little bit further. All right, verse 9. Oil and perfume make the heart glad, and the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. We've got a lot in this chapter about friends who give you good advice, and that is a really important thing. Yeah, I think this oil and perfume make the heart glad. That seems a bit strange, at least to me. I don't normally like a lot of smells. I don't really care much for perfumes and scented candles and all that kind of stuff. But in an agrarian culture where everybody isn't bathing every day, perfumes and oils could be a life
It
send.
can make everybody
a
happy.
godsend. Yeah, it could be a good deal. I mean, I think a modern equivalent of this would be a breath of fresh air. Let's get rid of the smells.
Yeah, I think the Italian for oil and perfumes is pheromones.
Yeah, we're just, our sensibilities in America are for like extreme hygiene, like we actually bathe too much. We actually use too many antibacterial everythings. And we don't know what it's like to like have our own natural odors. And people walk around. Jay and I don't use cologne or any kind of perfumes or anything scented. And so like when we go places where either there's scenting inside of a home or place of business, or if there's people who are wearing lots and lots of cologne, it's like it's overwhelming. It's really, so some of this has a lot to do with like what your habits are around this kind of stuff, I'm sure. But I think in general, we all know that there are good smells and there are bad smells. And oils, like essential oils even, which would have been much more common in this time, and that's what we'd be talking about. And even perfumes would have been not as artificially fragrant as what we tend to have nowadays. So they would have at least been a little bit more natural, which has a positive, I think it has a positive effect. Like, it's much better when it's a natural scent versus something weird and synthetic.
Yeah, I want to skip down to verse 14 because it's kind of related to that. It's not so much related to the proverb itself, but to some of what we were just saying. Whoever blesses his neighbor with a loud voice rising early in the morning will be counted as cursing. Yeah, I had coffee with Mike this morning, and he told me that he was up at 3 a.m. And I know you're an early riser, Scott, and Ravi, you were up at 5 o'clock this morning. And I'm like, how are all you people still breathing? I don't get it.
I'm old. It happens.
Yeah.
That's
So,
funny.
I mean, different strokes for different folks. You know, some people love lots of perfumes and smells in their house. They've got a scented candle burning all day long, every day. And they just don't feel good unless they've got some kind of good smells around. I don't care for it personally. When I leave the house, I don't want to smell like flowers and perfume. And I don't particularly like it all that much. I mean, some of those things smell nice, you know, apple pie or that kind of thing. That smells great in small doses. But some people really love lots of smells, and some people don't love any at all. And you just got to know what people's preferences are. In this
Well,
case, somebody
I
is
think
going
the
to the
point
neighbor.
is,
Mhm.
I think the point is regardless of whether you want to say it's oil or perfume, there is something that brings you joy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the point. And then the real essence of the proverb is the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. In other words, there are certain things that bring your heart joy, and if you have somebody that you consider a true friend, you can rely upon their earnestness, you can rely upon them for sound counsel. And I think that's the bigger point is once you have somebody that you trust, that's a good thing.
Yeah. For some people, that's like the smell of coffee at the break of dawn. And
it's just so desirable to be able to say, hey, I trust you. You know, you counseled me many a times. We've gone and had a beer and just talked. And I knew I was always going to get something sound. I wasn't going to get any BS. I was going to get somebody that was earnestly listening and giving an opinion. And I appreciate it, you know? So.
Oh, yeah. In verse 14, the neighbor he's coming to greet his neighbor early in the morning. And, you know, he's blessing him, apparently shouting. But if your neighbor is not an early riser, he's not going to take that well.
Yeah.
So the relation to that was that, at least the way that I was thinking of it, was that different people appreciate different kinds of things. And that particular analogy of the oil and perfume may not relate to everybody.
Right.
It's about whatever is a breath of fresh air that takes you out of, like, wow, there's still some good in the world.
I thought it was interesting. The next line doesn't just say, do not forsake your friends, but your father's friends.
Well,
that
probably has a lot more to do with the generational perspective of the culture at the time. You know, we just don't have a lot of that in the Western culture, where
That's something we're missing.
we, like, where I come from, we do. You know, like where I come from, like we have a lot more of that because the Cajun culture is so.
Yeah. So it's a respect your elders type of.
But it's also, I would imagine too, that, because of the kinds of relationships people built, family relationships with other families, that not forgetting the friends of your father would be important. Because that also means that they're your father's friends' children and that kind of thing. So
Right.
It's like extended family to some extent.
Yeah.
because there's lots of shared experience, and even in some cases, I'm sure, covenants and other stuff that probably would have happened.
Yeah, I think that
Well, it's almost like vetting. Your
Yeah.
family has vetted these people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, someone who was a friend to your father for decades, this is a guy that you probably
Yeah.
want around. I mean, if you respect your father, you respect his
Exactly.
judgment, then this is a good guy because he's going to give you good counsel. He knows your community. He knows he's got wisdom. Yeah, and especially, like what Paula was saying about the culture, they didn't move around a lot. I mean, you lived
Yeah.
in your family's town for 10, 15 generations. And today we're scattered all over the place. I mean, Ravi was
Yep.
saying how his family is divided up between the United States and all over India. And, I know that all our families are the same way. I've got my family
Yeah.
scattered over about 4,000 miles.
Yeah.
But that leads to the last part of that verse. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother who is far away.
Yeah. And that sounds almost like not just proximity, but also just in terms of like how much you know them, how intimate you are with them. Because yeah, like the closer you are, the more likely you are to have shared experience. I mean, I think we can probably, I'm pretty close to my family, and I have lots of long-standing ties with, extended family and stuff in Louisiana. But I live in Texas now, and I have for a long time. And so there are people here who are not my family that I fellowship with or that I spend time with and that I've known for a good bit of time and have, really close, intimate bonds with in that sense. And many times when I think about like people I want to ask for help from or share things with or whatever, it tends to be those people that I've built relationship with in proximity. That people that are closer in proximity have become closer to me in some cases than family.
Well, it's almost that tribe concept that people use a lot now. This is my tribe.
Yeah, like finding their tribe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a lot like in the case here, like what I'm talking about, there certainly is some of that in the sense of like a lot of the people, of course, that I would be talking about share my same values. These people are people of faith. There's all kinds of things that go into that. So yeah, I think that's true, that I'd maybe consider them more my tribe to some extent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to reestablish relationships in Maine, and I'm being very selective, and it's being very slow, unfortunately. So there, but it's almost thematic because we were talking about vetting, and hey, once you've vetted, it'll be a positive thing, but that process of vetting takes a while. It's a pain, you know, but it will pay off. It will be worth it once it's taken place.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you've got anything you need to talk about, Scott, you're always welcome to call me. But if you've got a flat tire, I'm not going to be much help. You need those friends in Maine.
Right?
That is true. That's a very practical understanding of this verse.
You're talking about verse 10, Jay? Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother who is far away.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
If
think
I've got
about
car
like,
trouble, I love my brother, but I'm not going to call him if I've got car trouble.
yeah, it's kind of almost, like makes me think about the ox in the ditch. It's like if your neighbor has an ox in a ditch, you're going to go help him. It's like,
Yeah,
they need help and they're going to be looking for somebody who's close by. Like
right.
that's just how it's going to be. They're not going to be like, nobody's going to be calling on a cell phone trying to get somebody to drive from far away.
Yep.
All right, let's move on. We're not even halfway through the chapter yet.
I know.
Okay. Be wise, my son, and make my heart glad that I may answer him who reproaches me. I think the meaning on that one is pretty clear, that, if you've got if your children are grown and they are showing themselves to be wise and competent and successful, if somebody criticizes what you've done in the past, you can point to your children and say, well, looky there. I guess I did it right after all. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's specifically talking about a son here, but I mean, the same thing is true of daughters, although it's probably more that a father would brag about his son and a mother would brag about her daughter. But, you know, of course, mothers will brag about all their kids. Let's talk about a quarrelsome wife.
Okay.
Continual dripping on a rainy day and a quarrelsome wife are alike. To restrain her is to restrain the wind or to grasp oil in one's right hand. And, you know, I was mentioning this to Paula, I think last night, or I don't know, maybe sometime yesterday. But sometimes it seems like Solomon is focusing on women. You got to watch out for those women. They're just trouble. But that's an illusion because it's like all the rest is talking about men. I mean, it's all talking about all people, but he's focused on men most of the time. He's saying, you got to watch out for those fools. You got to watch out for those lazy men. You got to watch out for these men. Oh, and by the way, don't forget, watch out for those women. That's really more of Solomon's approach here. This
Forgot where you were going?
particular, no, I'm just trying to figure out how to word it. This particular proverb is applicable
Paula, can
far
you
beyond
walk out of the room
marriage.
for a second?
Yeah. I'm gonna save myself here by saying this applies to all kinds of relationships. Any relationship that you have with somebody who's just trouble, who is constantly contradicting you or tearing you down or is just wild, uncontrollable. It's the same thing. I mean, if you don't have a choice about being in a relationship with that person, like say this is an employer, you have to work with them. So how do you do that? Because it's, especially if this is somebody who's your superior, I mean, how do you restrain that person? Well, you got to find alternative ways to do it. You can't just go to them and say, hey, you're screwing up, straighten up, because that doesn't work with anybody. I mean, unless you're best friends, and then that might work. But if you've got a strained relationship already, just going to somebody and telling them that you're trouble. You cause too many arguments. Well, that's going to start another argument. So instead,
Well, go to the New Testament, Jay, where it gives the role of the obligations of a husband and wife. And the wife's duty is to respect her husband. Now, the husband needs to earn that respect as well. But this proverb is just symptomatic of a wife that is not showing respect, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's talking about dripping. And in other words, I'm going to harp on it, harp over and over, and you become obsessed with it.
Yeah, but if you're stuck in that position, ideally, of course, you would avoid getting into this position in the first place. But, you know, things happen. We all get into relationships that we would have thought better of when we were young, or people change over time. Who knows what happens?
Yeah.
But if you're in that relationship, your options are limited. You can get a divorce, or you can try to work it out, you know, get counseling, that kind of thing. Somebody who is determined to be a thorn in your side, counseling isn't going to help. They don't want to make it work. But the other alternative is to find more subtle ways to control them. If you think about the other half of this proverb, to restrain her is to restrain the wind or to grasp oil in one's right hand. Well, how do you restrain the wind? You can't put your hands out and catch it. You have to find some other way to do it. You can build a wall to block the wind, you know, to make the wind go around your orchard. You can build or you can create a funnel or a reservoir or something to catch oil, but you're not going to catch it in your hand. It's just going to run all over the place. So the only way to cope with that is well, you can't do it yourself, of course. You've got to have some other tools, and whether that tool is other people outside the relationship, you know, family, counselors, that kind of thing, or some kind of strategy to channel that person's quarrelsome nature into a more productive avenue. And I can't tell you how to do that, because I'm sure the ways to do that would be I mean, an infinite number of ways for each person. So multiply infinite by, 8 billion people. And those are the numbers of ways that you might have to do that. And sometimes it's probably not even possible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not a subtle enough person to be able to manipulate people like that. And for the most part, you don't want to manipulate people, but sometimes you have to in order to get unruly people to behave.
Yeah, today that would be called managing someone.
Yeah.
Well,
What else?
it's interesting that verse is coupled with 17. Iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. Well, obviously, the dripping noise or a quarrelsome wife is not accomplishing iron sharpening iron. So there's a difference there. I don't know what that difference is, but it's certainly the not the opposite, but it's a different facet of dripping. What's the difference between dripping and iron sharpening iron?
Well, both of them are abrasive.
Yeah, I was gonna say that they
You cut out, Paula.
like gets changed, but it's not a very targeted type of change. It just kind of however the water flows, right? However that it's like it just it's but when you talk about iron sharpening iron, it's much more targeted. It's much more specific about what's going to happen when you rub iron together in terms of like the sharpening, right? The point's going to get more defined. But like, just like water, a river, how it carves its way, it's all jagged and, weird and random. Or at least it seems random, and water's just trying to find its level in that sense. But it's not very predictable. From our perspective, it's definitely not very predictable. It's just not as targeted. So it's just kind of like this randomness versus this targeted action.
Gotcha.
I think any relationship is going to have some kind of dynamic that's going to help develop the people in the relationship. And we want that to be a good kind of development. I mean, everybody has an impact on the people around them. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. But you want to surround yourself with people who are going to improve you, who are better than you or complement you in some way. Paula and I, in our early relationship, we shaped each other quite a bit. I mean, we were very different people. We're still very different people, but we've kind of met in the middle somewhere, or at least we're in the middle region, because we wanted to be together, and just spending so much time together eventually rubbed off a lot of those rough edges. And that's, good friendships between men have the same kind of dynamic at times. Especially when you've got somebody who will confront you when you're in the wrong, somebody that you can compete against, who is maybe whether you admire or you want to outperform for whatever reason, that competitive nature can also be a good tool to help you, to motivate you to personal growth. There are lots of ways that relationships can shape you, and you just have to make sure that you've got good relationships so that they're shaping you for the better instead of for the worse.
Yeah.
Okay. Verse 18, whoever tends a fig tree will eat its fruit, and he who guards his master will be honored. Lots and lots of stuff about relationships. I would bet that 80 to 90% of all the Proverbs are about relationships.
Yep.
And this one, of course, is literally about guarding your employer, like guarding his interests. If you get your sustenance from your employer, he's the one who's paying your bills, you're giving your housing, all of that. So if you want that to continue, or if you want more of it, then you make yourself valuable to your employer. I
saw a study recently, Jay, just to piggyback on what you were talking about in relationships. There's a study, and Paul, you're probably aware of this, showing different types of IQ, and ultimately the most successful, and typically you're talking financial, but you could be talking relational as well. The most successful people were those that had a high relational IQ, not necessarily a high IQ. And that sort of
Mhm.
speaks to what you're talking about,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep. Yeah, I think that's really true. I mean, I think that for many people, at least in modern Western culture, wealth and finances, wealth in financial ways seems to be the perspective around like success. But for many people who are financially successful, they also have a lot of relational capital. They
Yeah.
have a lot of relationship capital
Yeah.
that help them to get there. But historically, like if you look at, you know, even in an agrarian society or just other more traditional cultures, you know, relationships are really important. They've always been important for survival in tribal cultures, you know, just because we didn't all have safe homes to live in and whatever. And so relationship capital has been a source of wealth for many years.
Well, look at the whole Masonic organization. Good,
Mhm.
bad, or
Mm-hmm.
indifferent. Its
Right.
focus is on relationship.
Yeah.
And you will benefit because of your relationship if you know the
Yeah.
you know certain right people. That's more or less what they're saying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fraternities, sororities, even the Jewish culture, you know, the
Yeah.
Jewish religion and culture, like combined, like that
Right.
whole
Right.
culture is very what, you know, a lot of people call nepotistic, but like they're very much interested in supporting one another. And that a lot of that comes out of persecution, but again, a value for intergenerational relationships and all that kind of stuff really kind of plays into that because there's also the perspective around if you succeed, I succeed. And in
Yeah.
America, it's like I want to be the top dog. I want to succeed and I have to like climb over everybody to succeed and I have to be like because it's all about me. And we have kind of a warped sense of that in this country versus how about if we all rise together? Like if we all come up together.
Right.
And I think this also applies like in a sense like to marriage. It's like, you know, you become one. It's like if there's always contention and somebody trying to like come out on top and win, whatever that means, be the winner in all the arguments or whatever, nobody's winning. If you look at two becoming one, it's like if in my situation, I look at it, if Jay wins, I win. So I'm always rooting
Right.
for Jay. I'm like,
Right.
I'm always trying to, you know, I shouldn't say like always. I mean, we do have our disagreements, but I think in general, like I understand the principle behind like if I'm tearing him down or if I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to
Mm-hmm.
beat him at some game, it's
Yeah.
I'm not winning.
Right. Right. Right.
Yep. Yeah, you have to cultivate those relationships, have to encourage them, look out for each other's interests. Not just
Well,
relationships either. I mean, if there's anything good that's giving you good returns in life,
Yep.
then you have to guard that and cultivate it.
yep.
The last proverb in here in this chapter is also closely related to that. You know, when the grass is gone and new growth appears and the vegetation of the mountains is gathered, the lambs will provide your clothing and the goats the price of a field. There will be enough goat's milk for your food, for the food of your household and maintenance for your girls or your maidservants, depending on how you translate that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is about cultivating the things that you know are going to have a good return. And that can be relationships, it can be your investments, your business, whatever it is that is a positive force in your life. Cultivate it and work on it. You know, none of these things, nothing really good in life is going to have instant returns. I mean, there are very rare exceptions, but for the most part, everything good in life comes after months or years or decades of patience and planning and work. Just the way life is. And it
Yeah.
would be awesome if we all lived to be as old as Methuselah and Noah. But, you know, we've got 80 to 100 years. And that doesn't change that we still have to plan, and that things, success comes later in life with after years of discipline and toil.
That's a really interesting thing that you mentioned about, like, wish we all had as long lives as Methuselah and Noah.
Hmm.
But thinking about that and thinking about how short our lives are, I think it also, just because I know that we don't have that perspective necessarily in the West of multi-generational forward thinking, and
Hmm.
planning. But it really does speak to that too, which is like, if we have so much shorter of a time on this planet than man once did, then how much more effort should we also invest in our children, so that our children, as soon as they come of age, can begin investing? Whether
Hmm.
that means, and I'm not just talking about financially, I'm talking about in all the different ways. Because in America, at least, we like work our tails off till we're about to like die, and then we retire, and then of course most of
Yeah,
us
and then we
die.
die. Yeah.
And so there's like this like, and I say that, I mean, it's not exactly how it happens for everybody, but I think ultimately the perspective around it is like, then where's the reward? And I think that
Hmm.
we can certainly work hard and see a reward and enjoy things if we have the right perspective and the right relationships and stuff. But I do feel like this also points to the idea that, like, if we do this in our relationships with our children even, then we may be able to enjoy the fruits of our labor
Hmm.
earlier. Because like, if we were entrepreneurial and we build a business and our children join the business and continue to build that business, well, we could probably retire earlier. Like, there's all these different ways in which that kind of plays out. But also relationally, also like helping them build relationships, helping them become people who know how to build relationships. Like, those things can be valuable because they can build relationships that help them build their lives. So all those things really factor into this too, from the opposite perspective, like not having as much time on this earth.
Yep. All right. So is there anything else in this chapter we need to talk about?
They had the verses, some of the verses right before it.
Hmm.
um
Oh, well, there is verse 19 that we didn't get to. That was an unusual one.
19.
Mhm.
Yeah, and there's also, well, just when I was looking at 22, though you pound the fool in a mortar with a pestle along with crushed grain, his foolishness still will not leave him. And then it says, know well the condition of your flocks and pay attention to your herds, for riches are not forever, nor does a crown endure to all generations. That just made, and that came before what you were just reading in
Hmm.
25. And that whole, nor does a crown endure for all generations, made me think about, you can plan and you can try to build and invest and all these things, but that's not going to ensure that you have wealth or
Hmm.
whatever for every generation. Things are going to change, things are going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. But on
And
the other
so
hand,
that,
if you don't plan for it, if you don't work for that wealth and for that gain, it's definitely going to go away.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you won't have it to begin with. Yeah. So I just think it's interesting, like the caution about riches are not forever.
Hmm.
Like, obviously we have some modern ways to build trusts and all these things that can somewhat ensure
Yeah.
until the monetary system fails. But the point is that
Yeah. Even then,
like, we
those
have ways we
require
try to do
management.
that. Yeah,
Hmm.
but we try to find ways to do that, right?
Hmm.
So I think it's funny, like, we still can't just guarantee
Yeah.
against loss throughout every generation.
Yep. That is true.
But you were talking about 19 as in water, a face reflects a face.
Yep. So the heart of a man reflects the man.
Yep.
And I tried understanding this just reading it without consulting commentaries, and I really didn't get it. But then when I started reading commentaries, it became a little more clear. And I don't think most of the commentaries even get this right. I think that they're missing the point. Let me pull up, is it John Wesley I was looking at? So one man resembles another in the corruption of his nature. I don't know what that has to do with this proverb. I'm pretty sure that's not the point. That one's too long. There is no difference between men by nature, only the grace of God makes the difference. Like, okay, again, what does that have to do with this proverb? But here's what I think it's saying. Water is frequently a metaphor in scripture for spirit, or it can be a metaphor for deep thought. Early in Proverbs, Solomon talked about how the heart of a man is like deep waters because you can't tell what's going on down there. But in most waters, you can observe something about the bottom of the water by observing the top. You can see if there are boulders underneath, or you can see the currents by observing the water on top. And it says the heart of a man reflects the man, but the heart of a man these are the things that he's thinking. And you can't really see what a man is thinking, at least not deep down, but you can look at the surface. You can see what he's doing. You can see what he says. And these things are going to give you hints at what's going on underneath. So just as looking at your face, the reflection of your face on the top of the water will give you hints about what's going on underneath the water, observing the behavior of a person will give you strong clues about what's going on underneath that person. As like Forrest Gump says, stupid is as stupid does. You know that somebody is being a fool because they're behaving like a fool. That means there's foolishness in his heart. If somebody is behaving wisely and making good choices, that means he has wisdom in his heart. And I'm pretty sure that's what this is talking about.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The mortar and pestle. Of course, this isn't true in all cases, because Solomon also talks about how the rod is for the backs of fools. Well, what would be the point of using a rod on a fool if he never learns from his mistakes, if he never learns from punishment? This is a principle that certainly there are, some fools learn, some fools don't. Some of them, doesn't matter what you do to them, they're never going to learn. For those people, their only hope is to let them fail. Let them suffer the consequences of their foolishness, no matter how bad it gets, because there's nothing else you can do.